It is a great pleasure and privilege today and an honor to introduce to all of you Dr. Muhammad Amjad Saqib. We call him a doctor because he is a medical graduate from King Edward Medical School, Lahore, Pakistan. After graduating, he started treating people, helping persons who have the disease and the illness. Later on, it suddenly came to his mind and he started thinking of helping people who are involved in poverty, and he wanted to help people who are poor. So he decided to do something for the community, for the masses. Not only poverty is a problem in Pakistan, but there are so many secondary problems that are related to poverty, such as not only the various diseases, the illnesses, but also the lack of money to get medication and the secondary problems associated with poverty, which is not being able to go to school, illiteracy, and not being thus able to get a job, and the domino effect, which means one thing leading to another. Now, how can a person help reduce poverty? He thought about doing it properly, and he decided to go for further education, and he went to the USA University, Washington DC, and got a MA, the prestigious Herbert H. Humphrey Fellowship, which he got with flying colors. Then he returned to Pakistan. He worked in various organizations. He started working for the Public Service Commission. He was assistant commissioner in the Punjab government. Then he thought that it is better to resign and to dedicate his future life, his mission, his soul, all his energies to a microfinance organization which he called Akhuwat. Actually, he has written a beautiful book which I strongly recommend, which is My Journey Through Akhuwat. This is a book definitely worth reading. Akhuwat is an organization which deals with microfinance, which helps people, not only one person, but helping one person helps a family, helping a family helps the whole community, helping the whole community helps a nation. So he is flying his colors very nicely, bringing people under his banner, under his flag, propagating the concept of microfinance, taking it forward so that other people get involved in his projects, get involved in his ideas. They follow his example of showing the light, not only to help poverty, not only to reduce it, but also to help the secondary problems associated with poverty. So we wish him all the good luck and hand over to Dr. Amjad Saqib for his interview so that he can tell you all about it.
Welcome to TVapex. I am Suhail Anwar. The word poverty inherently refers to a lack, which can be of income and material resources, but also a lack of other life essentials like education, healthcare, and the quality of life and well-being. In Pakistan, the rate of multidimensional poverty still stands at above 49%. That is going by an Oxford University study commissioned by UNDP. While such staggering figures require immediate policy action, Pakistan unfortunately is still far from being a welfare state. As a consequence, the responsibility of welfare has to be equally shared by the private and voluntary sectors. And remarkably, in a world driven by cutthroat competition, there emerge people who selflessly devote themselves to such challenges. Today, we have with us someone who is recognized as the humane face of welfare in Pakistan, Dr. Amjad Saqib, the executive director of country's first interest-free microfinance provider, Akhuwat. Dr. Saqib, welcome to the studio. Thanks for taking the time out to speak with us. If we may briefly go through the history of Akhuwat, how it all started, and how this organization grew so exponentially during the last 1 decade.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, Suhail sir, for inviting me and giving this opportunity to talk about Akhuwat. In fact, Akhuwat history goes 12 years earlier. I was working in a rural support program in Pakistan. We were also dispersing these loans, but these loans were at that time on interest basis. So in that time, a lady came to me. The story begins with that brave lady. She came to me and said that she would like to borrow some money to sustain her families, to start a business. But at the same time, she put a very strong condition that she said that she won't like to get money on interest basis. She said that she would like to give a good life to her family, but she would not come into any conflictual situation because the interest is contradictory to her belief. So that was extremely, interesting for me, and I gave her 10,000 rupees raised from a few friends. She purchased 2 sewing machines and started working hard. And during next 6 months, she not only nurtured her family with the income of these machines, but she also married one of her daughters. And at the end of the 6 months, dot on time, she came back to me in my office, and then she returned that 10,000 rupees and said that she doesn't need this money anymore. So that was a very, very, very defining moment. I usually call it that a lady, she was a widow, she had nothing to start for a good life, but at the same time she was too keen to support her family. She didn't want her children to go astray or become victims of any criminal activity, but at the same time she had firm faith in her ideology, and she wanted to get a money which doesn't contradict his basic philosophy of life. So that was the beginning. Then we thought that if life of one family can be changed with this 10,000 rupees, why not to enhance this? Then we God was very kind, and we created a pool of money, and that pool of money was donated by haves, well-intentioned people, the people who want to share their riches with the poor people. So that pool of money started growing, and we utilized that as a revolving fund and gave small loans to these poor people, the people who had dignity, the people who didn't want to beg, the people who want to realize their own potential and come out of poverty. So this is the beginning, and that first loan has now reached an amount of 6 billion rupees, and one lady, the story started with one lady, and at this point of time, alhamdulillah, we have been able to serve more than 350,000 families. That comes to around 2.5 million people. So this is the brief story, but this is a long story as well, because there are many ups and downs, there are many problems, issues, challenges, there are many moments, frustration, but at the same time inspiration, and this is at this point that it is now the world's largest interest-free microfinance program, and the way it is moving ahead, mashallah, we are seeing a very, very bright future for this program.
Well, that's incredible. So, Dr. Saqib, it's been like for you personally a journey which required a lot of commitment also. So currently, as you have mentioned, you are one of the world, probably the largest or one of the largest interest-free microcredit finances. What are the current methods or mechanisms which Akhuwat is using to enhance its welfare services?
Akhuwat, as you mentioned, it entails a lot of hard work. It is the story of passion, it is the story of commitment. The basic instrument which we utilize is Qarz-e-Hasan, that is the interest-free loan, or you may call it a benevolent loan, the loan which is given without any financial incentive.
Right.
So the conventional microfinance people, they give loan and charge interest, that is the cost of capital, and they charge service delivery, all the administrative costs is shifted to the shoulders of the borrower. But the instrument and the methodology we utilize is the Qarz-e-Hasan, and Qarz-e-Hasan is a very preferred practice in Islam specifically, but in all religions. This is, so Elsa, between you and me, if I need some money, I ask you, and if you need some money, you ask from me, and we come up and fulfill mutual needs. But at the same time, we don't charge interest.
That's right.
We are friends. So we have not invented anything new. We have just built on the existing individual practice of this mutual interaction. Exactly. That is the Qarz-e-Hasan,
which is the natural form of social support and the social networks, the way they were to start with, in the most natural form of it.
So this individual practice has been institutionalized.
Right.
That if this practice is to be expanded and to be given at a larger scale, because microfinance or these small loans have been proven to be a very, very plausible strategy for poverty alleviation.
That's right. Yeah.
You give these tiny loans, people become self-employed. They start a business. They start coming out of poverty.
Yeah.
Their children go to school. Their parents or wife is able to get a medicine because of that, the income coming from that enterprise.
Yeah.
So microfinance is nothing new, but what we introduced is a new innovation and a creative approach, that if somebody wants to get a loan without interest, that means you are at one point of time, you are not causing any friction between his ideology and his practice.
Right.
And at the same time, you are not getting a partner, becoming a partner in the income of that enterprise. So the entire, whatever is earned, that is his or her, that belongs to the enterprise.
Dr. Now, from that response, you mentioned about Qarz-e-Hasan. I know Ukhuwat is not a religious charity as such, but it seems to draw heavily on the Islamic welfare ideology. So is this your conscious approach towards welfare, or was it just a convenient mechanism that you thought will be successful in Pakistan?
You are very right. It's not a religious organization. It's a faith-inspired organization. We draw inspiration and strength from Islamic spirit of solidarity with the poor. Muakhat or Ukhuwat is an Arabic word, and it is a practice initiated by Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, when he asked the people coming from Medina to join hands with the residents of people coming from Makkah, the residents of Medina.
Yeah.
So a bond of relationship was established, and that is called muakhat, or brotherhood.
Right.
So for us, we draw inspiration from it, and this inspiration is, of course, drawn from my ideology, but the message is for entire humankind.
Right.
There is absolutely no distinction of color, caste, creed, religion, or anything.
Right.
As we say that God is Rabbul Alameen, and Holy Prophet Rahmatullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is Rahmatul Lil Alameen.
Right.
So this message is not confined to Muslims.
Right.
Anybody who is willing to come out of poverty, who is willing to fight against these odds, and who has not surrendered and who does not believe in charity, he can come to us, and we will assess his or her potential, and if we think that she or he is eligible for that kind of a loan and she has the ability to make a business, so we will give this loan. So we draw inspiration from faith, but we work for every person.
Right. So on a related note, the religious minority in Pakistan, minorities, they are considered to be at an additional risk or vulnerability, especially in economic terms. This is partly because of their low social capital.
Yes.
They don't have a lot of people to approach, and partly because of their possible exclusion from zakat, official zakat program, which has historically been the largest and a very consistent program over the last 30 years. So is Akhuvat conscious of this vulnerability and sort of especially targeting the vulnerability of these minorities?
You know, Sahib, I fully agree with the first part of your question, your statement that the minorities and the Christians are specifically extremely handicapped. They don't have education, they don't have assets, they don't have financial inclusion, they don't have political power, they don't have education, they don't have linkages which are necessary to move ahead in life. So they are extremely marginalized and disadvantaged. And you know, our focus is on poorest of the poor, irrespective of any caste, color, creed or religion. So the natural choice is these people coming from these minority groups. And we specifically on priority basis we identify these people and help them build their capacity and start a business.
How do you identify these people?
You know, we have offices. Right. For example, at this point of time, we have more than 255 offices throughout Pakistan. Right. So one office is manned by 5 or 6 people, and then those people, the employees, the loan officers, they go to the marketplaces and make some awareness about the program, and tell those people, the small entrepreneurs, that look, if you need capital, you can come to our office. And another source of spreading the awareness is through religious places, through mosques, through churches, and through other community places. We go and tell people that if you want to start a business, you can come here. And third source is that is the from one existing borrower, word of mouth. The people tell that we have taken benefit from this program. So they are our ambassadors, and they are our people who preach this program to others and bring those people. But specifically, we have special arrangements, and emphasis and priority is given to the minorities and the women. These are our important areas.
Okay. Doctor, moving on, talking about the beneficiaries, their attitude, and also of the benefactors. Now, going through this remarkable journey of yours with the Akhuvat, you have had the chance to come across many people and discover new attitudes, behaviors. Do you think our low-income people are, you mentioned about that, low-income women to start with, who came back on her own. But by and large, do you find these people trustworthy? Do they keep their end of the bargain? And what is your recovery of loans like?
This is remarkable, something amazing. This is a totally new word, unexplored. These people are creditworthy. These people are trustworthy. These people are bankworthy. These people, the point is, if you love somebody, he will love you. They have been mistreated by state. They have been mistreated by the privileged classes. But if you change your attitude and develop a bond of solidarity and love with them, they will never disappoint you. You will be amazed to know that we have been able to disperse more than 6 billion rupees amongst 350,000 people, and the recovery percentage is 99.8%. So what other evidence you will expect from us, that a poor person who doesn't have any collateral, who doesn't have any credit history, and who doesn't enjoys good reputation in the eyes of so-called elite, and they are taking 6 billion rupees and returning it at the rate of 99.6%. So how will you explain this? So that how we explain is that this is the attitude, this is the relationship, this is the cultivation of a bond. So if you love somebody, especially the poor, they will come up to your expectations. They will never betray you. This is real Pakistan. One Pakistan, you can find that you will find people getting millions and millions of rupees and then defaulting, and these poor people getting only tiny amounts and paying those in time, starting a business, and not only creating wealth, but that wealth being distributed equitably amongst them. So this is my experience, is that people are trustworthy. This is just our wrong conceptions about them, and the basic relationship should be correct.
Okay, so what about the other side, the donors, the benefactors? I know you mentioned that people supported you, but at the same time, this has probably been a big challenge also, because interest-free lending in a world where the real value of money diminishes over time, and with Pakistani currency especially, it depreciates really, quickly. And then there are organizational costs. No matter how much you reduce them, they still remain there. So while others rely, your competitors probably, they rely on those astronomical markup charges, you probably totally depend on these donors. So are they easy to find?
Let me explain. First of all, we don't charge any interest.
Right.
We don't charge any service charges. We don't take any administrative costs.
Right.
Now, this is the logical question, that how can we sustain?
Yeah.
The point is, we are swimming against the tide. We say that without interest, we can sustain ourselves. And this is not what I say. This is what Allah subhanahu says in His holy book. The entire program is based on two assumptions.
Yeah.
Assumption number one is that there are people who are willing to contribute for the welfare of society. Right. There are people who are willing to donate. There are people who are willing to share their riches with the less advantaged. This is the assumption number one.
Right.
And second assumption is that there are people, once they take loans, they are willing to return.
Right.
They are credit worthy, they are trustworthy. So these two basic assumptions are the foundations for this program.
Right.
And with the passage of time, during last 12 years, these assumptions have attained the status of universal truth.
Right.
Because first assumption is people are willing to give. So how we have been able to raise 6 billion rupees? Starting from 10,000 rupees.
Yeah.
So this is people like you. Everybody has this desire to help others.
Right.
This is the positive side of humanity, and why should we shut our eyes from this? So this is, and at the same time, the other assumption has been proven true, because these people have returned at the rate of 99.8%.
That's right.
So as long as, my argument is that we are sustainable, as long as these two assumptions are true.
Right.
And one more thing I would like to tell you, that if an economic enterprise can thrive, why not an enterprise which is based on altruism and philanthropy?
That's right.
Why? Because this is, basically human beings are good natured.
Right.
We should exploit. We should, exploit on that strength. So this is what we have done. This is how we have collected money. This is how we have identified good people who are willing to do something, and this is how we have trained them, and this is how we have converted these 350,000 people into our donors. You will be amazed to know that these poor people not only have crossed the threshold of poverty, and from takers of the loans, now they have become our donors. So the whole concept is based on, basic goodness philosophy, and maybe these principles you may be seeing that they are totally against the economic wisdom or the financial wisdom, but this is also another side of life.
I mean, the typical banker's argument would be probably, which I don't subscribe to, nevertheless, that if maybe that you survive, you sustain, but if the pursuit is not commercially viable, then it may affect the limit and the scale of your growth and the scale of your outreach, how quickly you reach to how many people.
But this is the economic wisdom, but this is not the whole wisdom. Right. There are many other things in life, tawakkul and sacrifice, and going beyond the self-interest is extremely important. If you really want to build a nation, build a society, then only economic principles will not be sufficient.
Dr. Saqib, you also talked about the poverty threshold. So do you think in a country like Pakistan, which is still a developing country, there are structural impediments for the low-income people to come above the poverty threshold? And do you think government and private and voluntary sectors are doing enough to rise to the challenge of reducing such structural impediments?
This is extremely important. Structural impediments are, as long as you don't remove these impediments, you will not be able to attain a prosperous society. The poor people, they don't have access to finance, they don't have access to education, they don't have access to good housing, they don't have access to good training or skills institutions. So the political structure, the economic structure and the financial structure, the banks have a step motherly treatment with these people. The basic thing is financial inclusion, and these 80% people don't have collaterals.
Yeah.
So how can they access finances?
Right.
So this is extremely important, and as long as structural adjustments and improvements are not there, the society cannot develop. So this is point number one. But the next question, that how far the governments or the private sector has been able to achieve any change or improvement in this these structures. So I can't say anything because everything is in front of you, but as long as I feel that this is my responsibility as a citizen, as a member of the community, as a member of the civil society, for development of a community, there are three basic stakeholders. Number one is the state, number two is the private sector, and number three is the civil society. So instead of criticizing the state or the private sector, I should be able to tell you that what I have been able to do as a member of civil society. So we have, this is a very major step for enhancing the financial inclusion, this making poor people available this money and these this financial paradigm and the institution. So this is one effort towards improving this structural deficiencies.
So talking about the inclusion that you mentioned, so an inclusive society is probably the upcoming global aspiration also, because I believe the new Millennium Development Agenda beyond 2015 is largely being projected as a life of dignity for all. So do you think the current procedures of interest-free financing is aligned well with this new objective? And the second part is, do you have enough international support for your work in Pakistan, or have you been able to inspire others to follow the same model locally or internationally?
The first thing, you have talked about dignity. That is extremely important. People can live without money, but people cannot live without dignity, honor and respect. Ukhuwat begins with this, inculcating the spirit of dignity, self-respect and self-reliance. There are two, things, two extremes. On one extreme is the capitalism, the market economy, which has made 6 billion people paupers. And on the other extreme is the charity. We give charity, we give, make them beggars and don't help to, realize their potential. So we have, found a midway that neither you should create a system which gives them financial inclusion through interest-based economy, and at the same time we don't want to give them charity and doles. So this is real pursuit of real human dignity and self-respect. That you give them money, you ask them to work hard, and they become self-employed, and then they slowly and gradually come out of poverty. And once they complete the cycle, then they are willing to help others. So in a larger frame of things, this dignified approach of financial access without contradicting the basic philosophy or ideology and the moral principles, we are fitting in the larger agenda. But the next question is extremely important, that how much we have been able to inspire the international donors or international non-governmental organizations. So that is still, a lot needs to be done. There are people who still don't believe that interest-free loans are viable. They come up with the criticism like the sustainability and then the insufficient resources and then the recovery pattern. So we have to fight on these fronts, and we have to convince people that look, this is another way of financial inclusion. This is another plausible way of poverty alleviation.
Right. And Dr. finally, just a couple of questions about the person behind the personality of Akhuwat. I was reading your newly published book, which I have here with me, Akhuwat Ka Safar. It is about your remarkable journey with Akhuwat over the last decade or so. But I believe your literary pursuits are not only microfinance related. So would you like to tell us something about the other books that you have published over the years?
Yeah, this is now I only talk about microfinance and live microfinance and nothing else in my life.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, when I joined Civil Service of Pakistan, and at that point of time I was very keen student of Urdu literature, and my first book won a prize for me. That was the Khushal Khan Literary Prize. This is about the city where I served as Assistant Commissioner, and the name of the book is Shahr-e-Lab Darya.
Right.
And then later I wrote a travelogue. That is the travelogue of Nepal.
Right.
And that also was very well taken and well appreciated. So I have long love for this literature, and this was, the seeds were germinated right in the initial stages of my life.
Right.
As a student, I got some teachers who were extremely they inspired me, and they told me that if you really want to learn the lessons of life, then start reading literature. So this is real life.
Yeah.
This is beyond economics, as you were talking. We were talking, because literature accomplishes you. Literature gives you a new dimension. Literature knocks at your heart, and it gives you. It tells you how to love people. It tells you how to love life.
Right. Yeah. And finally, Dr. Saqib, because of your enormous social contribution, you already have a legacy which I think is larger than life. You just also mentioned about giving up your civil service career, which I believe is a thriving career in Pakistan, to give careers to other people. So in retrospect, do you think this, should we say, sacrifice was worth what you have achieved, and would you do anything differently if given another chance?
First of all, let me say that whatever I am doing is extremely, I am getting, maximum pleasure out of it. I was in civil service, and I made my mark there as well. But soon I realized that my best place is when I am working with the poor people, living with them, sharing with them, learning from them, and giving my best to them, and taking their wisdom for myself. So that I discovered during the earlier period of my civil service, and luckily I got an opportunity, and then I was, you can call that I was brave enough to break the shackles of civil service. It's very difficult. It was a difficult decision, but if I'm allowed to live another life, of course I will be doing the same thing, working with the poor people, working for them, and trying to build a world where everybody leads a good life.
There's so many aspects to your personality. How would you like to be remembered in, say, a century, 200 years?
No, the point is, I would like to be remembered as somebody who served the poor, somebody who clothed the unclothed, somebody who established a bond of love and solidarity with the poor. You know, your question reminds me a famous anecdote. Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, once somebody asked him that you are doing so much for your nation, why? People are generally ungrateful. Why are you doing this? So Qaid-e-Azam gave a very beautiful reply. He said that a day of judgment is very near, and I will be soon presenting myself before Allah Almighty. So I would just like to see at that day God saying that well done, Mr. Jinnah. So that is an extremely, I would also like, who won't like that at the day of judgment, this same sentence or the same from the Allah Almighty, that well done, Mr. Jinnah. So this is all what we are doing to please Allah Almighty.
Right, somebody who has served the poor, those people who were not empowered, try to empower them. Dr. Saqib, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Sohail Sahib. I really loved it. Thank you.